Okay, so we should be back to normal now. We're back in the room. We're back at the desk. Everything should be back to normal. Oh, we couldn't get back here quickly enough. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to week 15 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2025 CFL season. And yeah, it looks like we might have been a week too late on trying to get things back to normal. Now that the short weeks and the week with 3 teams coming off bye, we're kind of back to normal now. And unfortunately, I got eaten alive by the final week of not being back to normal. 3-9 last week, which is ugly, not good. And when you go 1-3 picking the game straight up, you really put yourself behind the 8 ball to try and have a solid week of picks. I did go even money on the spread at 2-2, so that's something to be a little excited about. But look, it was like the universe gave me 1 week. They gave me 1 week of being over 500 on the totals before they were like, oh no, this won't do, and just smacked me right down with an 0-4. So yeah, not a good week. We're gonna kind of try to burn the game tape on that one a little bit, but you learn lessons when you fail, right? You get better from failure. So hopefully we're going to get better this week. Look, still 11 games over 500 on the season as a whole, and that includes, 12 games over 500 straight up. So, I mean, look, it's not exactly the end of the world. Everybody's going to have bad weeks. The trick is to not make this a trend. And we're not going to do that because this week we're going to get back on the happy side of things. CFL Fantasy, I actually pulled out a pretty respectable week last week. 103.4 points in the CFL Fantasy game last week, which is actually, I think, top 300 across the entire game. It was not a great week for everybody in CFL Fantasy, so to pull off a triple-digit week feels pretty good. 1,610.3 points on the season, an average of basically exactly 115 through the first 14 weeks of the CFL year. That actually had me jump 81 places in the overall rankings. I'm back inside the top 250 at number 227. The top 500, 1563.6, so I'm about 50-some points inside of that, which is great. The top 250, I'm only inside by about 5 or 6 points, 1604.2, so the margin there is pretty darn thin, but we're back here, and that's what matters. Obviously took a jump in my 2 CFL fantasy leagues as well. The CFL Central Fantasy Football League with 1,356 entries. I am now at number 29 on the year, a jump of 18 spots from last week. And in Christina Costabile's league, I'm back inside the top 20 at exactly number 20 out of 375, which is a jump of 5 places. Shout out to my MVP from last week, Elks running back Justin Rankin. Carried the ball 16 times, 204 yards rushing, and a pair of rush touchdowns. Was good for 32.4 points. A massive week for him that he's going to try to keep going basically for the rest of the year, because man, does that Elks offense ever live and die on what Justin Rankin is able to do. Our Week 15 slate of games looks like this. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers hit the road, go to Hamilton to take on the Ticats. Ottawa and BC rematch from last week. This time that game is in BC. The Edmonton Elks play their 8th consecutive game in Toronto this week against an Argos team coming off of their bye. So once again, wild rest discrepancy in that game. And you got the Montreal Alouettes in Saskatchewan taking on the Riders. The Calgary Stampeders at 8-4, second place in the West Division, are on bye this week. So we'll start in Hamilton with that matchup of the Ticats and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Again, the Bombers coming into this game on their 9th consecutive game since the last time they had a bye. Of course, they had the early season byes, and again, they're really on this really long stretch of consecutive football games. They dropped their first Banjo Bowl since 2018. They're losers of back-to-back games, allowing a 15-0 unanswered second half run to the Riders and lose Zach Collaros to injury again. That's at least the second time this season, if not the third. I hearken back to what I said a month ago. The quarterback dilemma in Winnipeg is a full-blown crisis. and yet somehow Trey Ford remains an Edmonton Elk. For the Bombers, they are back towards the basement of the CFL efficiency rankings. Despite the fact that they've had a bit of a defensive turnaround, their defensive numbers look a lot better than they did 2-3 weeks ago. The offensive efficiency has plummeted. They're now down to number 7 in the CFL over the last month at a 14.8. And the injuries are back. We mentioned Zach Collaros, who's probably not playing this week. Dalton Schoen, ACL injury, he's done for the year. So the injuries are coming back. Collaros looks like he's not playing. The one constant here, I think, is Brady Oliveira, and it may be all on him. In Hamilton, the Ticats snapped their losing skid last week, taking care of Montreal by 3 possessions. That was despite the fact that a bad game from Bo Levi-Mitchell, and it's been very rare this season that we've talked about bad games from Bo. He only had 191 yards passing, did not have a passing major, threw an interception. He did kind of salvage his fantasy day at the very least with a rush touchdown, but those numbers, not what we have become accustomed to with Bo Levi-Mitchell. But despite that game, it was Greg Bell who drove the offense for the Ticats, 190 all-purpose yards. He added a rush touchdown in what I think was definitively the best game of his CFL career. Hamilton's defense also seems to be trending in the right direction. The last time I did the defensive efficiency rankings, they were at a 13.8. They now sit at a 14.5. That's a pretty significant increase. They're allowing 30 fewer yards per game, and the scoring defense has improved by about a field goal. So again, it's not a massive jump forward, but it's a trend in the right direction, which is what you want to see. What I'm a little more concerned about is, we all know the potency of this Ticats offense, but I can't sit here and say that we've seen a truly great offensive performance from the Ticats in more than a month. They've had some games where they've scored some points, but I'm talking about a great performance on the offensive side. I'm starting to forget when it was the last time we saw that. Their O efficiency right now sits at equal to their D efficiency at 14.5, and we've certainly seen the Ticats be better than that, a lot better than that this season. Like I mentioned, 9th consecutive game for the Bombers, which is certainly not good. They've lost back-to-back. They've only won 2 of their 6 road games this season, but worth pointing out when you look at these two teams and how they've played out of division. This entire week is out of division games, East versus West. Winnipeg has actually won 3 of their 4 games against the East Division. Hamilton has only won 2 of 6. So even though Hamilton is a heavy favorite here at home, it's worth pointing out their performance against the West Division has not been great this year. This is kind of where I'm going to fall on this. I think the Ticats are the better team, especially in light of the Collaros injury. And again, there's questions about whether, when do we see him play again? Does he play again this year? Who knows? I'm going to go with the Ticats to win this game because I really do not trust Chris Trefler. I really do not. I can't help it. I really do not. So we're going to take the Ticats here to win. However, they're favored by a full touchdown against the spread, exactly -7. And that I don't think I can do. Even if this is like a backdoor cover for Winnipeg, I really like taking the points here with the Bombers. It insulates you against an upset because upsets always can happen. I just don't feel like Hamilton is a full touchdown better than Winnipeg right now. I mean, you can make an argument for Winnipeg to win this game outright, but we're going to take Hamilton to win. But again, we're going to hedge our bets, take the +7 on the Bombers. Total in the game set at 52. This is also part and parcel of why I'm taking that +7. I don't think this game gets into the 50s. A high 40 for sure, but a 50, again, I feel like the offensive capabilities of the Bombers are capped with Chris Trefler at quarterback, so I don't have this game getting into the 50s. Let's go like a 27-21. Again, we're talking about maybe that backdoor cover of the +7, but we're going to go Ticats win 27-21. Winnipeg covers +7. Give me an under on that 52-point total. Let's go to BC now for that rematch from last week. Lions playing host to the Ottawa REDBLACKS. We'll start in Ottawa, who secured win number 4 last week via the Crumback. 31 second half points for the RedBlacks, including 18 in the fourth quarter. A wild comeback for Ottawa, with Dustin Crum going for 370 all-purpose yards, 3 total touchdowns in that game in yet another spot start this year, because again, Drew Brown simply cannot stay healthy, partly due to that bad offensive line and whatever. Look, it's not a quarterback controversy. Like, Drew Brown is objectively the starting quarterback of this team, but what do they say? What's the best ability? It's availability. And Dustin Crum has been the one that's been available more, I guess, consistently than Drew Brown has been this season. And look, I don't think the RedBlacks' offensive upside is necessarily capped maybe as much as I thought it was a couple of weeks ago with Dustin Crum at quarterback. Games like last week's are fun and all, and they lend to the excitement of the CFL and why people love the Canadian game so much. Sorry, Luke Wilson. But that's all the RedBlacks really have to offer. It's that potential for that kind of game that we saw last week. Like the Lions and like the Toronto Argos, in fact, they are utter glass cannons. The RedBlacks are tied for second in offensive efficiency at exactly 13.0. Their D efficiency is the single worst D efficiency in the league at 11.2, good for number 9. So they can move the ball, they can put up points, they can't stop anybody. On BC's side, the Lions are going to get another crack at this in a rematch after, of course, getting crumbed last week. And in a game that close, it's the little details that matter more and more and more. They threw 2 interceptions, did the Lions. Now, one of them was on, I think, the last play of the game, but it's still 2 interceptions. They also fumbled the ball twice. They were lucky to not lose either of those fumbles. But what that tells to me is that they were sloppy with the football. Again, not ball control was not paramount to them in that game. Plus, they took, 105 yards in penalties, 9 penalties, little differences like that in a close game. They can be the difference. And last week, maybe they were. Like I said, glass cannon. Glass cannon is absolutely right. The only difference in efficiency between these two teams is very marginal. An 11.5 D efficiency for the Lions versus the 11.2 we just mentioned for Ottawa. Both of these teams, what we now know about them is both of these teams are capable of beating and being beaten by literally anyone. Even though they're on back-to-back losses, to their credit, the Lions have played better ball in their own building than they have on the road this year. Again, Ottawa just 4-8 on the season. Gotta believe the BC Lions are the better football team here. I think BC gets them back for that game last week. Give me the Lions at home, to get the win over Dustin Crum and the RedBlacks. Now, this is the single most ridiculous line of the entire week. The BC Lions are laying 9.5. 9.5 point favorites against a team that just beat them. Yes, they had to beat them via Crumback, but they did still beat them. And these are two defenses that really are just kind of there for show. Like they don't seem to have, a high-end output on the defensive side, either of these teams. So to lay 9.5 points, I don't think you're 9.5 points better than this team that just beat you last week. So we're definitely taking the plus 9.5 points on the Ottawa REDBLACKS, because they could definitely win this football game once again, just like they did last week. Total in the game doesn't matter. There's no total you could give me in this game that I would take an under on. We're going to take an over on the 56.5 point total. I see no reason why this game doesn't get into the 60s yet again. Give me like a 34-30. Have the BC Lions get it done. Get the revenge for last week. 34-30. Lions win. RedBlacks cover the plus 9.5. Over on the point total. Let's go to Toronto now for that aforementioned game of Argos playing host to the Edmonton Elks. Like I said, massive rest discrepancy in this game, with the Argos coming off their bye and the Elks playing their 8th consecutive game of football. Both of these teams coming off of wins, Argos coming off of 2 straight. Like I said, Elks are back in the win column with a decisive win in the Labor Day Classic rematch against Calgary, which took place last week. The Justin Rankin legacy game, like we mentioned in the fantasy section earlier. 16 carries, 204, 2 touchdowns against, a pretty elite defense. But it wasn't just the Justin Rankin show. That was a legacy game, don't get me wrong. But the pass rush for the Elks generated 4 quarterback sacks, and they controlled the football. They didn't fumble the ball. They didn't have a ton of giveaways, which we know there's the propensity there in Edmonton to turn the ball over, and they don't generate a ton on the defensive side either. But again, the pass rush was there. They controlled the football, and that was a big part of them getting that win last week, and a pretty decisive one at that. Last week's win continued a pretty excellent run defensively here for the Edmonton Elks. They are currently sporting an elite defensive efficiency number of 16.5, number 2 in the entire CFL. They're a top 3 scoring defense over their last 4 games. They're only allowing about 360 yards per game in that same span. And don't look now, but again, let's go back to what I said in week 1. If this Elks defense can do anything, they've got a shot. And boy, oh boy, maybe I'm prematurely saying this, but this feels like a playoff team to me. It feels like more of a playoff team than Winnipeg or BC. The Argos, as I mentioned, coming off of their bye at just 4-8, but winners of 2 straight games, game against Hamilton and a game against the BC Lions, where the offense showed out. 87 points on the board for the Argos in the last 2 games, nearly 950 total yards of offense, 8 offensive touchdowns in total in those 2 games, but are debating a quarterback change? The Chad Kelly discourse is not one that I'm going to dive into in this episode. What I can say from a statistical point of view is I don't think there's any reason that you take Nick Arbuckle off the field right now. I've been as critical of Nick Arbuckle as just about anybody. But the way he's played in this opportunity, this extended opportunity without Chad Kelly healthy, you can talk all you want about how, Chad's our franchise quarterback and da-da-da-da. You can't argue with what you've seen on the field. Again, the Argos offense has been very reliable, and it's been reliably high-end with Nick Arbuckle lately. The O efficiency, number 1 in the CFL over their last 4 games at 11.9, and this offers a compelling matchup against an Elks defense that's playing inarguably their best football of the entire season as well. 10 giveaways, however, in the last 5 games for the Argos is also fairly reliable. Ball control may wind up being the single most critical factor in this game. So there's a path where Nick Arbuckle throws a couple of interceptions and the noise around going back to Chad Kelly gets very, very, very loud. So despite the wild rest discrepancy, and I normally bite. Rest discrepancy is my thing. That's my jam. I normally bite. I think I've bit on this every time there's been a game like this. I'm actually going to take the Edmonton Elks. And it's not that Edmonton has been super good away from home, because they haven't. I think they've won 2 of their 6 road games. But they have won 4 of 6 against the East Division. They're one of the better teams in the CFL against the opposing division, at least with the results that we've seen so far. I'm going to bite on that. I'm going to take the Edmonton Elks to go into Toronto, off of Toronto's bye, and get the win against the Argos. Elks with the upset in Toronto. On the line, the Argos are laying 4 points as a home favorite. They absolutely should be. I'm taking those plus 4 points on the Edmonton Elks here because I like them to win the game outright. Total in the game's at a 56.5 points. I do think this game probably goes over. Toronto's going to get their points, especially if Edmonton kind of gets out to an early lead. Toronto's definitely going to get their points. I just think Edmonton's going to get a couple more. So I think it's going to be tough to keep this game under. Let's go a 31-28 final for the Edmonton Elks. Maybe they have to walk it off. Edmonton beats Toronto 31-28. Elks win. Elks cover the +4. Give me an over on the point total. And the last game of the week we're going to look at is the Montreal Alouettes in Saskatchewan, taking on the 10-2 league-leading Riders. The Alouettes, now losers of 5 consecutive games. Their free fall continues in a lopsided loss to the Hamilton Ticats. I think they lost that game. It was 26-9, something like that. So, I mean, look, 17-point loss, not close. Hey, they do keep getting healthier. They're getting guys back. And it looks like McLeod Bethel-Thompson is going to get the start this week, as tepid as he's been in 2025. And when I say tepid, I mean he has one game this year where he's thrown for more than 205 yards. The Alouettes' defensive efficiency has recovered from their previous slump. When we talked about this, I guess it was, 3 weeks ago or so at this point, they were sporting a 13.6 for a D-efficiency score, which was a reflection of the fact that the offense couldn't do anything. So the defense was just being hung out to dry. And I totally get that. They've gone from a 13.6 to a 15 and number 6 league-wide to number 4. So that slump is over. The defense is back to looking like the Montreal Alouettes defense. And that does bode well for them moving forward, despite the fact that they're still giving up well over 400 yards a game and a little more than 27 points a game over the last month. They're still moving in the right, like Hamilton, they're moving in the right direction, and that's what matters. And any jump on the offensive side, any movement forward on offense for the Alouettes will do wonders, because look, the Owls' offensive efficiency, it's the worst in the league. It's an 18.0. They're scoring 15.5 points a game over their last 4. Any jump forward on the offense is going to help the defense. Meanwhile, in Saskatchewan, the Riders win their first Banjo Bowl since prior to the Panini, so it's been a while for them in the Banjo Bowl, and they have a shot to sweep Winnipeg in Week 20. But they can't be looking ahead to that game. The offense continuing to sputter, even though they won. The offense continuing to sputter, but that defense remains essentially undeniable. Like, when we're talking about why the Riders sit here at 10-2, why the Riders sit here as like the objective Grey Cup favorites, unless you like Calgary, which there's reasons to like Calgary, but pretty well consensus Grey Cup favorite. The reason that that's the case is the fact that that defense is undeniable, even when there's injuries, which they're definitely dealing with right now, especially in the secondary. Since the Riders' first loss of the season to Calgary, which was back in Week 6, which, look, they've only got 2 on the year. Both of their losses have come to Calgary, which I think is really funny. But since that loss in Week 6, the Riders have won 6 of 7 games. In those 6 wins, the turnover ratio has been exactly 2-1. The defense has generated 16. They've only given the ball up 8 times. They've also only allowed 9 red zone visits in those 6 wins. They had multiple games where the opposing team did not get into the red zone at all for the entirety of the game. And in those 9 visits, they've had multiple stops. I think they've had like 4 stops in 9 red zone trips or something like that. Like, respectable. They do, however, enter Week 15 as the second most penalized defense in the CFL. If they do have an Achilles heel, I mean, you can throw on them, but if they do have an Achilles heel as a defense, they're very undisciplined on the defensive side. That could cost them in games that are closer than this one. But I think this should be at least a 2-possession win for the Riders. This is the Riders' 5th straight game. 5 straight doesn't really come into play all that much. Again, the Riders are 10-2 on the season for a reason. Also, the Alouettes, they're only 2-5 against the West Division. So even kind of when they were good, they were struggling against the West Division. And again, 2-5 on the season out of division. So I don't really think there's too much of a risk here. Let's take the Riders at home to get the win over Montreal, continue their win streak, stretch it to 3 straight. Now, the Riders are laying -8.5 points here as a very heavy home favorite. I actually think they cover that number. And again, it's nothing to do with the Owls on the defensive side. I think their defense is going to still be able to do some things in this game. I just don't think they're going to cover that 8.5 points. I do think the Riders cover the 8.5. So give me the minus 8.5 on Saski. Total in the game set at 50 points. I'm going to stay under on it, and I'm going to stay under pretty heavy on this number. I think this is only like a mid 40. I don't think this thing sniffs 50. So give me a 27-17. 27-17 in favor of the Riders. Saski wins. Saski covers. Give me an under on the 50-point total. Now let's keep the ball rolling here in CFL Fantasy. My Week 15 CFL Fantasy roster is right in front of your eyes right now, and you're going to notice I am leaning on the Crumb. Dustin Crumb at 10.8K is going to be my starting quarterback. We have a story here of the locks and the question marks. So let's start with the locks. Crumb at quarterback, no question. I'm running back Justin Rankin, without question. Herzlau is one of the best fantasy assets in the game right now, and he's under $10,000. He is a lock in my lineup. Travis Thies, unless he doesn't get the start, again, he's still only 2.5K. The value is insane and allows you to overspend in other places. He's going to be in my flex because he plays the latest game of the week. And I'm actually going to lock in the Hamilton Ticats on defense here as well. Again, I only have them giving up 21 points. They're probably going to be facing Chris Strevler. It's good value because they're, I think, less than $6,000. So again, spending down on defense will allow you to spend up in other places. So we're definitely going to go ahead with the Ticats. Now we get into the question mark. My debate is between three running backs here. It's James Butler or Brady Oliveira, and they're both maximum money. So I might make a swap there somewhere because, man, that Ticats run defense is not very good. So it makes Brady very attractive. The other option, I'm just going to hold off on here for a second and hop over to wide receiver. Right now, you're going to notice that's sitting as Justin Hardy. I don't want that to be Justin Hardy. I will go with it if I have to. What I think I may wind up doing is at that running back spot, Greg Bell saves about 1.6K over the max money of James Butler or Brady Oliveira. So if I go with Greg Bell there, it will allow me to move off of Justin Hardy to a higher price target that I want elsewhere, including one that's on his same team in Geno Lewis. So it's either going to be, if I can't find a way to get myself away from Butler or Brady, I may have to roll Justin Hardy, or I may dig deeper and find another option. If I do make the swap to Greg Bell, it's going to open up some more options for me in the receiving game. So, as always, any change that I make to my fantasy roster will be in the pinned comment down below. There you have it, folks. Those are the picks and plays for Week 15 in the CFL. We'll go over them here with you one more time. I've got the Hamilton Ticats beating the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 27-21. I'm taking the +7 on Winnipeg in a game that stays under the 52-point total. I got the BC Lions getting revenge on the Ottawa REDBLACKS, winning 34-30. I've got the RedBlacks covering +9.5 in a game that goes over a total that does not matter. The Edmonton Elks in Toronto, I have them upsetting the Argos 31-28, taking the +4 on Edmonton and a game that goes over the 56.5-point total. And I've got the Saskatchewan Roughriders handling the Montreal Alouettes 27-17. Riders cover -8.5 in a game that stays under the 50-point total. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. We're back in the regular digs. Hopefully we're back to normal, and hopefully we're back to some better results than what we saw last week. Enjoy the games in Week 15. We will see you again for sweet Week number 16.